Hello. It is hot in here. Don't start the time yet. Don't start the time yet. Whew. Someone control the air in here? She has the fan. Get her! No.
Clock's ticking.
All right. Thank you so much for the privilege of speaking with you tonight and the honor presented to us to be able to represent Jesus Christ and his gospel in the context of a debate which will assume things that only comport with his revelation to humanity and the biblical worldview. I would like to humbly point out the context of our debate. We are all debating while standing at the precipice of eternity. The subject of tonight's discussion, the existence and attributes of God, has a dramatic impact not only on our present circumstances and our ability to provide a meaningful foundation for all that we'll be appealing to this evening, absolute standards of ethics, necessary, unchanging, and universal laws of thought, the ethical responsibility to not choke each other to win tonight, or to lie, and a uniform creation where the principle of induction can be assumed. But we are, and whether or not we have peace with or are reconciled with our God, who is the central reference point and foundation of all questions regarding truth and knowledge. He is the necessary precondition for our debate this evening. The great gift of tonight's debate is that both panels freely admit to representing a particular worldview. We're not pretending neutrality in this discussion, and neither are our opponents. We are unashamedly committed to Jesus Christ as God come in the flesh, the one who died for the sins of his people, conquered death, revealed himself in conscience, creation, and scripture, took on flesh, dwelled among us, and revealed himself to us. And apart from whom, this debate wouldn't even be possible, nor have a coherent foundation. From a biblical and philosophical perspective, neutrality is a myth. From a biblical perspective, neutrality is a myth in the context of who we are. Romans chapter 1 says in verse 18 that the wrath of God is being revealed from heaven against all ungodliness and unrighteousness of men who by their unrighteousness suppress the truth. Think about what that's saying. It says God's revelation to us is that all of us, not just Bruce and our atheist friends, but all of us before God are rebels against our Creator. And all of us are, because of sin, suppressing the truth and unrighteousness. That's the context from a biblical perspective. Jesus says you're either with me or against me. There's no neutrality with Jesus. From a philosophical perspective, all of us have a particular view of reality, and epistemology, how we can know what we know, and ethics, how we should live our lives. You've seen that just a moment ago. And before you this evening is a collision of worldviews. Each panel has professed beliefs about God, the world, origins, how knowledge is possible, the nature of human beings, human value and dignity, and our responsibilities to one another. Our opponents profess to reject the existence of their Creator. They claim that we live in a non-personally guided and ungoverned cosmos, that our ancestors were fish, that we've evolved from highly evolved societies of bacteria, that we are stardust in a universe with no divine justice ahead of any of us. We are fundamentally bipedal protoplasm with only sky above us. I want to encourage you to not to judge God in his existence this evening. It's a futile pursuit to question God's existence in his presence, by the way. But to judge the debaters. Pay close attention to what each side is saying, what each side is supposed to be standing on. Because each side is standing on a particular worldview, I believe that it's important to ask the question, is what we are saying consistent with what we are standing on? Let me say that again, please, humbly. Is what we are saying consistent with what we are standing on? In other words, is what we are doing and what is coming out of our mouths consistent with the underlying worldview that we profess? In examining a particular person's worldview, it's important to watch for arbitrariness, mere personal opinions, or unfounded prejudicial conjecture. For example, saying that we shouldn't eat babies because that would be the end of the human race. So what? From an atheistic perspective, we're stardust. You're assuming what you have not proven. It's arbitrary. And watch for inconsistency. Is the person acting consistently with their platform or worldview that they say they're standing on? Is one side forced to abandon their platform or worldview in an attempt to borrow truths and concepts from the others that do not comport with their own professed view of the world? Let's start with the biblical worldview. The biblical worldview fundamentally says that God, who declares the end from the beginning, who is the sovereign in the heavens above and on the earth below, and does according to his will in the heavens above and the earth below, that God, the eternal God, from eternity into eternity, the first and last, that God, who is all-powerful, all-knowing, just, and love, has revealed himself in creation, conscience, and specifically in the person of his Son. God has spoken. We have a revelational epistemology. We can know what we know because fundamentally God has talked to us. Bruce was wondering a moment ago about how can people be sure that we know what's going on in his head. Well, the biblical claim is that God is all-powerful, all-knowing. He created all of us, including Bruce, and knows what he's thinking. A definition of God. Question 4 of the Westminster Shorter Catechism. This is for all my presbybrosis. Reformed Baptists here. To show solidarity. Question 4 of the Westminster Confession. God is spirit, is a spirit infinite, eternal, and unchangeable in his being, wisdom, power, holiness, justice, goodness, and truth. Our argument this evening to our esteemed opponents is that the existence of the triune God and his attributes are the necessary precondition for intelligible experience. Apart from him, human value and dignity is an illusion. Laws of logic are not necessary and unchanging, and science is rendered useless apart from God. Our argument this evening is that apart from the triune God revealed in the Scriptures, you cannot provide a meaningful justification for claims to knowledge, you cannot prove anything, nor can you provide the preconditions necessary for all that we take for granted. The uniformity in nature, laws of logic, and ethics. That is to say, we are arguing transcendentally. We are arguing, to quote Dr. Bunsen, from the impossibility of the contrary. In my opening, I'd like to direct your attention to 3 specific points of contact to demonstrate that apart from the Christian God, you cannot know or prove anything. Number 1, the uniformity in nature. From a biblical perspective, God is all-powerful. God is sovereign. He upholds all things by the word of his power. Hebrews chapter 1. Specifically, we have revelation from God, contact with God. The jailer has stepped down at a time, though we're chained to the wall. He has stepped down and touched us. He has told us that he carries the universe along to its intended destination. Christians have a meaningful warrant or justification to appeal to the principle of induction. Now, my friends, both atheist and Christian alike this evening, please pay close attention to this, because everything that we're doing tonight, including what you're appealing to right now, depends upon this central point, the principle of induction, in popular parlance, the uniformity in nature, that the future will be like the past. All inference, all science, all language is based upon, fundamentally, the uniformity in nature, and that future experience will be congruent with past experience. And by the way, this is not a trick. Bertrand Russell, one of the most famous atheists in history, who wrote the book, Why I'm Not a Christian, also wrote a book in 1812 called, or 1912, I forget, sorry, Problems of Philosophy. He brought up the issue of induction in his book and demonstrated that you must provide a meaningful justification for the uniformity in nature, and you cannot appeal to past experience to do so. In other words, here's the question. In the uniformity in nature, how do our atheist friends who believe we live in a naturalistic, materialist universe provide a meaningful justification for science and logic that the future will be like the past, that the next 5 seconds will be like the past? And appealing to past experience, according to Bertrand Russell, one of the most famous atheists in history, is circular. It does not provide a meaningful justification. Christians can provide the preconditions for intelligibility as to why we can do science and how we can do science. Second point, laws of logic. Fundamentally, in the Christian worldview, we know that God is spirit. God is immaterial and unchanging. He is eternal. To engage in contradiction is to engage in the nature of lying. God, the scriptures say, cannot lie. To contradict yourself is to lie about what is true and about reality. Christians, listen closely, have a justification as to why we can appeal and how we can appeal to universal, unchanging, that's invariant, necessary laws of logic. We have the preconditions in the worldview that can make sense of that, and we have an answer for the moral requirement to be honest and have integrity when discussing proof or reason. Laws of logic. Based in the very character of God, God cannot lie. God's thinking is consistent and rational. Our thinking is to be a reflection of his thinking. As his image, we are supposed to be like him. God is not the author of confusion. Number 3, ethics. And this was assumed a moment ago. From a biblical worldview, we can have human value and dignity at the bottom of our system because all people, including atheists, are image of God and have value and meaning because they reflect the infinite value and goodness of the Creator. Human beings, all human beings have value and dignity and worth by nature of being image of God. God has spoken. He says, love your neighbor. That is to say, as Christians, we actually have a basis to say we morally ought to love our neighbor rather than eat our neighbor. From an atheistic perspective, standing on their worldview, they have no justification as to why we ought to love our neighbor rather than eat our neighbor. God is love. Love does no harm to its neighbor. We are image of God. Jesus says all the law and the prophets are based upon love for God, love for neighbor. Why do we not steal? We love our neighbor and we love God. Why do we not murder? Because we love God and love our neighbor. Love does no harm to its neighbor. We are image of God. The atheist claims the Bible is contradictory. Well, from an atheist perspective, so what? Our ancestors were fish. Religion is based on superstition. So what? Descendants of bacteria aren't obligated to worry about graduate school. Professed Christians have done evil things in history. From an atheistic perspective, so what? What African apes do to each other is morally irrelevant. There is evil and suffering in the world. So what? Richard Dawkins said, the universe as it exists displays there really is no good, no evil. There is only blind and pitiless indifference. Only blind and pitiless indifference. Dr. Will Provine, professor of biology at Cornell University, says that there is no immanent morality. You know what that means? It's an illusion. He says there's no human free will. We live, we die, and we're gone. We're absolutely gone when we die. That, my friends, is an honest atheist, although he doesn't have to be. Because from an atheistic perspective, there is no foundation to provide the necessary preconditions for integrity in debates. Atheists claim the Bible is full of evil. But brothers and sisters, friends, tonight, are you ready? So what? So what? Nothing is ultimately evil in an atheistic worldview. We're just doing what Stardust does in a godless universe under these conditions. I want you please to tonight ask the question over and over and over to each side, both the Christians and the atheists. I want you to ask this very simple question. Are you ready? So what? When claims are made, if so what is a philosophically devastating critique of your worldview, it is not a worldview you should hold on to any longer. In honor of Dr. Bonson, he said in his debate with Edward Tabish, the atheist is satisfied to ignore the need for intellectual justification and explanation, the need to gain consistency within his total beliefs, and the need to demonstrate systematic cogency in his overall perspective on the world, man, and values. In this light, atheism, for all its proud boast of scholarly adequacy, is a kind of intellectual adolescence, which refuses to think hard, face the facts, and be tough-minded. Atheists live, when all is said and done, by blind and contradictory faith about how we know and what the nature of reality is. Atheism is arbitrary and irrational, all the while dressing up in the costume of rationality. Atheism, philosophically speaking, is much closer to superstition, undisciplined reflection, and wishful thinking than to science. That was my shout out to Bonson. 3 things I want to humbly present to you tonight. The claim is not, listen closely, the claim tonight is not that atheists don't do science, don't appeal to logic, and don't have an ethical system. The claim is that they cannot account or justify any of those things. Saying something doesn't justify it. You must provide the preconditions necessary to make that claim intelligible. If you're going to claim science, you have to be able to justify meaningfully how that is possible in a godless universe. If we live in a universe that is not governed by God and is ultimately without cosmic purpose, it is devolved down to time and chance acting on matter. And you do not have a justification or an answer for David Hume, the Scottish skeptic on induction, nor for Bertrand Russell. Saying, well, it always has been in the past, is, philosophically speaking, adolescence. Number 2, our challenge is that God is the necessary precondition to make sense of human experience. That apart from him, you cannot prove anything, and that we can prove God from the existence of the contrary. I want you to think tonight, if you would with me, this is for Christians and for atheists. I love, by the way, as atheists, you're my favorite. But I'd like you to do this tonight. Would you test our claims? We have already professed before you that we are standing on a particular view of the world. To come here tonight and to give us a perspective of the world and then claim that that's in fact not a perspective of the world is not helpful in a debate. I'd like you, if you would, to imagine for a moment that we are standing on 2 stages. And underneath us is what we profess to believe about the world. Now, if you would tonight, I'd like you to look at what comes out of our mouths. I want you to think about what comes out of our mouths and ask this question. Besides, so what? I'd like you to ask the question, is what's coming out of their mouth consistent with what they say about the world? And the third thing I'd like you to know tonight is that there is hope in Jesus Christ. Listen, this is not a mere intellectual game. This is the stuff of life. This is whether or not we have a meaningful foundation to tell people that science is an important enterprise, that science is necessary, that laws of logic are universal and unchanging, and they are necessary. This is about the stuff of life. This is about meaningful human experience. This is not merely an intellectual game or gymnastics. And in the end, this is very much about what life is all about. God is who he says he is, and he is a necessary precondition for this entire debate tonight. I would say our atheist friends have violated their own professed beliefs about the world by showing up. Because if atheism were true, we wouldn't have any meaningful justification for all that we're appealing to tonight. Uniformity in nature, laws of logic, and absolute standards of ethics. But in the end, here's what's most important. God became a man in the person of Christ, lived a righteous and sinless life, died for sinners, and rose from the dead. Not merely to save you for heaven one day, but to save all of you now. To reconcile you to himself now. And he doesn't just reconcile you to himself and bring you to peace through the cross. He also saves your mind.
Wow, the Bonson Conference. Cool. First one was a couple years ago in 2013, and I looked at the list of speakers, and I thought, there's no way I'm ever going to speak at the Bonson Conference. You look at the list of speakers, you see I was half right, but I do get to come out to this debate here today. I'm very thankful for this church for putting it on. And I just found out today that one of my main mentors in this apologetic, he messaged me on Facebook that he was introduced to presuppositional apologetics by your pastor, Paul Vigiano. So, and of course, I've been a devotee of Bonson. I'm going to take my time for this. I don't have a lot to say in rebuttal. But about 8 years ago, I was on an operating table, and I had my appendix removed. And there were complications. And after that, a few days later, they actually had to zap my heart to correct a rhythm in it. And I got home from the hospital, I got an email from my pastor. And he didn't say, oh, I'm glad you're home. I hope you're doing all right. The only thing he said, aren't you taking your adulation for Bonson a little bit too far? That's the kind of family that I have. And I have to tell you that before this debate, I do have a bit of a heart condition, so I was racing. So for those Christians in here, please pray for me that doesn't rear its head. I don't know what's going on, but I'm just going to, it'll help me maybe even be a little bit calmer than you might have seen me in the past. But I do want to start my rebuttal by saying that Jesus Christ is King. Jesus Christ is King. He's my King. He's your King. He's their King. See, the difference between the camps tonight is not the kingship of Jesus Christ. The difference between the camps is that we profess it and they suppress it. You see, according to our worldview, Jesus Christ is God in the flesh. He's the creator of all things and nothing is possible without him. Not even this debate here tonight. See, I thank Jesus Christ for allowing this debate to take place in a place of worship, no less. The place where tonight our God is being blasphemed. And he allows that to take place. See, because blasphemy against God is not only taking his name in vain, it's taking his word in vain. And the word of God says that everyone knows that he exists and without excuse for their sin against him. Now, our atheist opponents want me to not say that. They want me to give up my worldview. That's what my worldview says. I will not depart from it. I refuse. Will they depart from their worldview? I say don't use logic because that's a foundational part of it. No, they won't allow that. So, becoming a Christian is not a matter of going from unbelief in God to belief in God. It's going from suppressing the truth to professing it. Our opponents tonight are suppressing the truth about the God that they know exists, that everyone knows exists. Not a sufficient knowledge for their salvation, but a sufficient knowledge for their condemnation. You see, it's one thing to make that claim, it's another to prove it. Well, as Christians, we have sufficient proof in the Word of God. But tonight, I'm going to further evidence that claim. See, according to Romans 11:36, from God, through God, and to God are all things. What do all things include? Truth, logic, reason, science, morality. All things. Our opponents here tonight have attempted to use all of them, but have neglected to justify their ability to do so without God. Pay close attention, because they won't. They'll give you arbitrary answers, but they will not give you the justification for the complaints about the God that created them, the God that has given them every breath, the God that has allowed them to be here tonight, the God that has allowed them to blaspheme his name tonight. See, in the closing statement, I referenced that in my question to Bruce of a debate that he did recently. How do we know what is true? Bruce said, I understand now, through the process of looking at psychology on a very amateur level, that we could be wrong big time on any of our thoughts, no matter what our personal experiences might be. We could be wrong about everything. So I asked him, yes, he believes that. He could be wrong about everything. Now, that's what you said. I did not expect this debate to be any different from all the other debates I've had. But after I saw that from Bruce, I thought, what's the point? In a debate about truth, he says he could be wrong about everything. He says we could be wrong about everything. When he says that, he gives up knowledge. He can therefore know nothing. Now, why is that the case? See, because if you ask me the speed of the road outside this church, and I said to you, it's 30 miles per hour, but I could be wrong. Do I know it? Not if I could be wrong. I could even be right, but I don't know it if I could be wrong. He's admitted that he could be wrong about everything he claims to know. And he wants to stand here and make knowledge claims. There's one in particular. He says, that's a fact. There is no way around it. Does that sound like somebody who could be wrong about everything he claims to know? He's borrowing from the God he knows exists. See, we've come here to debate truth, and our opponent has given up truth. As I said in that debate, he says he could be wrong big time on every one of his thoughts. But wait, that's not what he said. He said we could be wrong about every one of our thoughts. Well, there's a problem with that. You see, if he could be wrong about any of his thoughts, how could he know what we could be wrong about? Because he could be wrong about that. And that's the absurdity of atheism. See, it's worse than that. If Bruce could be wrong about any of his thoughts, guess what? He could be wrong about his thought that we could be wrong about any of our thoughts. You might have to play that back. But that's quite simply absurd. You see, when I go out evangelizing, I present people with an option. Jesus Christ or absurdity. I cannot make anyone choose either. Very often, though, people choose absurdity. Why? Because they love their sin. You see, Bruce will say that we could be wrong about any of our thoughts, and then we'll come to a debate and argue as though he's right about his thoughts, and we're wrong about ours. See, in the newspaper article concerning this debate, Bruce is quoted as saying that presuppositional apologetics is absurd. Really? Absurd? Well, could he be wrong about that? Yes. That's an absolute statement. You see, when I asked him about an absolute statement, he shied away from it, he got away from it. He doesn't want to go down that road, because it is absurd to reject absolutes absolutely. You see, not only has Bruce given up all knowledge, he wants to hold us to a standard of rationality which he must borrow from the Christian worldview. What is something that's absurd? Well, something that deviates from an absolute standard of rationality. Where does Bruce get that without God? Here's another claim that he made. Atheism is a better worldview to live by. A better worldview? As an atheist, shouldn't you just say it's a different worldview? When you say one worldview is better than another, you're comparing it to an absolute standard. Where does he get that without God? Borrowing from our worldview. Sean Taylor is quoted in that same article as saying that belief in God is illogical. What does that assume? That there's an absolute standard of logic that our belief deviates from. Where do they get that absolute standard without God? You see, Jeff touched on it a little bit earlier, but logic is universal. Logic is not made of matter, logic does not change. God is universal, God is not made of matter, God does not change. I'm not saying that God is logic, but God is logical. And we have a worldview that makes sense of logic. Ask the atheist, where do you get universal, abstract, invariant laws from without God? They will not give you an answer. They'll dance, but they will not give you an answer. Now, this debate is titled The Existence and Attributes of God. Well, I just shared with you one of his attributes. God is logical. Our opponents have accused us of being illogical. Well, as my brother Jeff so wonderfully articulated in his opening statement, so what? What's wrong with being illogical to advanced bags of primordial goo? You see, I can tell you why it's wrong to be illogical. Because we're created in the image of God. Ephesians 5 verse 1, we're told to be imitators of God. When you are illogical, you're saying that God is illogical. See, a logical contradiction amounts to a lie. When you're saying it's both the case that my car can be in the parking lot and not in the parking lot at the same time, in the same way you're lying, God tells us not to lie. Why can you not have logical contradictions in a worldview without God? Where do you get laws that forbid contradictions in a worldview without God? My friends, it's absurd. They will not answer those questions. I mean, they will try and get away from them, they'll try and get around, but they won't answer that question. Here's another attribute of God. God is not a thief. Why is stealing wrong? Not because it makes people mad, not because of, whatever reason that they're going to come up with, an arbitrary reason. Stealing is wrong because God is not a thief. You're created in his image. When you steal, you call God a thief. That's why stealing is absolutely morally wrong. I can answer that question. Why is adultery wrong? They might even disagree with that point. But adultery is not wrong because it destroys families, which it does. It's a terrible consequence. It's not wrong because it destroys marriages. It's a terrible consequence. That's not why it's wrong. Why is adultery absolutely morally wrong? Because God is perfectly faithful. When you're committing, ma'am, do you mind? This is not a participatory thing with the audience. Why is adultery wrong? Because God is perfectly faithful. That's why it's wrong. And when we commit adultery, we call God an adulterer. That's why it's wrong. Now, people are uncomfortable with stuff like that because it holds a mirror up to their life. It's not wrong because there's some arbitrary command about it. It's wrong because of who God is. And everyone here knows that. That's why they know things are wrong. And that's why you know things are wrong when you do them. And you suppress that truth. And the older you get, the more you're going to suppress that. God's going to hand you over to it. That's why you need to repent tonight. Because God hands people over to the suppression of the truth. You see, I go to college campuses and I talk to young kids and I can talk with them. I can have a nice philosophical argument with them. I can tell them. But when they get older, I go to the reason rally and people in their 40s and 50s, they give me the finger. And I'm their best friend. See, if somebody's walking toward the cliff, who's the best friend? Not the one who talks about how nice the day it is, nice what you're wearing. It's the one who says, stop, there's a cliff. And my friends, there's a cliff that these people are walking towards. That's why we're here. You see, according to their worldview, our thoughts are nothing more than brain barf. Chemical reactions. And they want to hold us to a standard that they simply can't justify without God. No. Bruce doesn't have faith. He doesn't have faith. He has confidence. Confidence. Confide, from the Latin, with faith. But this man's faith is going to lead him to hell. And we have to love on them tonight. Love on them. Love on them. Love on your atheist friends.
2 minutes.
Tell them about the God that they know exists. That's why I'm a presuppositionalist, because I'm not here to coddle people into hell with evidences. No. I'm here to hold the mirror up and show them the God that they know exists. You see, when you give truth to people, it doesn't matter if they mock. It doesn't matter if they tell you not to talk like that anymore. Who are they coming to when they're in trouble? When they have trouble in their life, they're not coming to the person who's argued with them about the complexity of the eye for 6 hours. They're coming to the person who said, I know that you know. Our Bible says they know. They know. Are they lying? No. They're suppressing the truth in unrighteousness. They lift up other beliefs and they suppress the other ones. Why? Because they love their sin, just like you and I did. But God saved us from that. It's nice to be in a crowd where the majority is Christians for a change, and I love your faces, I love you nodding of your heads. Pray for them. Pray for them. Right now, it's not too late. Amen.
Good evening. There was a rather cynical comment on the thread of a local newspaper running a piece on this particular debate. The comment was, at the end of the event, everyone will go home with the exact same views they arrived with, smug with the knowledge that they are right. I would like to think that to be false. Perhaps I'm hoping against hope that major transformations will take place, that the light of Christ will shine in the hearts of our esteemed opponents and guests. And I'm not saying that in any condescending or patronizing way. I would rejoice. I would rejoice. I'd go home. I'm Italian, so I'd probably go home crying if that were to take place. And I am firmly convinced that God is capable of such things, of softening stony hearts. But I would like to conclude this evening highlighting 2 things. First, the flawed nature of the request of my atheistic friends. When they require God to do certain things to overcome their disbelief. I want to address that, what they're requiring of God to overcome their disbelief. And finally, what we are all called to do in light of the information that we actually do have. First, you will continually hear atheists emphasize sound thinking. They believe in logic. They believe in critical thinking and science. But they say this as if the finest thinkers in history, from Augustine to Aquinas, Luther, Calvin, Hodge, Jonathan Edwards, who is generally regarded by secularists and theists alike as the finest mind to grace North American soil ever, as if they are not engaged in critical thinking and logic and science. Be that as it may, couched in their professed sound thinking is the demand that God, and you've heard it so many times, that God provide evidence. And when one asks what kind of evidence they require, they'll mention things like the splitting of the moon, the rearranging of the stars, the elevating, I've heard, of the pulpit, the healing of the sick. They'll say, this is what I need to see. This is what I require. Numerous times I've asked my atheistic friends, how would these things prove to you the existence of God? How would you know these things are not merely tricks, or the power of aliens, or the Russians, or some other undiscovered phenomena? To this, the question I've heard one of our esteemed guests answer, he said, of course, I would have to exhaust the possibility of natural phenomena. But at least it would be a step in the right direction. If I got up and saw 2 moons, at least it would be a step in the right direction. But of course, I would have to exhaust all the possibility of natural phenomena. But how long would that take to exhaust all the potential natural reasons for a second moon? I'm sure you would be on the phone with his favorite astrophysicist. Why is there 2 moons? He'd say, well, our moon was pregnant, as it so happened. Gave birth. But it would take a lifetime. It would take 10 lifetimes. I submit that never in this life would they draw the conclusion that this affirms the existence of God via our own limited ability to investigate. We would never get there. Of course, and I don't want to sound patronizing again or condescending, if my atheistic friends truly grasped the nature of metaphysics, ethics, and epistemology, by that I mean what is real, what is right, and how we know these things, they would realize that the mere scientific method, the cold construct of logic, and their own limited ability to think critically, things, by the way, I firmly believe should be employed in this life, but they will never lead them to the source or basis of the very disciplines they tout. Simply put, the scientific method cannot lead to the truth about the scientific method. Let me explain, because you hear this all the time. The empiricist, that's the scientist, is fond of saying, I will only believe in that which is testable, measurable, observable, repeatable, or even more simply put, I only believe in what I see. But of course, the very statement, I only believe in what I see, is an immaterial concept. So the moment you say, I only believe in what I see, you've contradicted yourself. You've engaged in a self-refuting life and worldview which must be abandoned. I would like to parenthetically add here that faith, we hear this word faith. The word faith and belief in Scripture are the same words. The word in the noun is pistis, or the verb form is pistuo. And these words do not mean, as been suggested, and even some English dictionaries might offer, quote, belief that is not based on proof, or even belief against sound evidence. That's not what belief or faith means. What a person believes, at least in this sense, is their starting point for inquiry. It is what they hold to be true a priori. It is what they believe before they believe anything else. And it cannot be improved empirically. It cannot be proved any other way, because whatever you would use to prove it would become your new a priori, it would become your new presupposition. You see, what we believe is the means by which we evaluate other claims of metaphysics and ethics and epistemology and everything else for that matter. When our opponents say they believe in science, they believe in critical thinking and logic, they are stating their a priori convictions, that they are men of faith, who, respectfully stated, I hope, have no authoritative, clear, or professed basis for the faith they so vehemently espouse. But they are men of faith. Be that as it may, we all believe in many things we do not see. Time and energy, space, mass, subatomic particles, love, courage, justice, virtue. These are necessary realities we all know to exist, yet we see none of them. Yet we know they exist, even though we don't see them. And I might add that the most plausible explanation for the reality we do observe is the acknowledgement of and acquiescence to an eternal self-existent God from whom all things come. It explains everything. I know they don't like that answer, but that is the answer, and it explains everything, material and immaterial. And without him, nothing can be explained. As Dr. Bahnsen posited, the proof for the existence of God is that apart from acknowledging God, you can't prove anything at all. All this to say, I'm not against marching out the evidence and throwing my bags of it on the table, but then they'll just plop their evidence on the table, and this will continue ad nauseum. And the cynical thread comment that I read at the beginning will just prove true. The same will occur if seeking to engage their false understanding and criticisms of biblical ethics and their shallow accusations against of biblical contradictions, of which there are none, if one really studies logic and understands the literary genres of the scriptures. There are no contradictions. Allow me to inform you why I'm not all that concerned with empirically proving my theological convictions. For example, yes, as an apologist, I have a degree in apologetics, and I went to a seminary that taught evidential apologetics. And they would argue about the proof of the resurrection, but I'm not all that concerned with proving that Jesus resurrected by some historical evidences. You know why? Because there were guards who were there, and they saw the resurrected Christ, and it meant nothing to them. What point is it if it didn't do anything for them? In fact, it can easily be argued that the two generations in Scripture who saw the greatest number of signs and wonders during the time of Moses and Jesus were the most stiff-necked and hard-hearted people in the history of the redemptive account. They saw the most miracles, and they were the most hard-hearted. Jesus said it in so many words, it's an evil and adulterous people who look for a sign. My friends, the atheist demands for evidence is a flawed request, but they have a legitimate desire that God would make himself known. But if signs, wonders, evidence, scientific and philosophical inquiry will not suffice, what will? What is the most reasonable? In fact, the only reasonable dilemma of the ignorance on the part of the creature. What is the answer to that? They so dislike this answer, but it's been so many times. It's reasonable and it's universal that God has revealed himself to us and manifested the truth of his existence in us. He's shown it to us outwardly and inwardly, as Romans 1 indicates with absolute certainty. It is not through evidences. It is not even through the discursive reasoning of intelligent design as if God is found at the end of our calculations. It is self-evident. It is something the creature can't not know.
2 minutes.
Yet it is in our nature to push it down. And that's what, my friends over here, that's what's happening. That Greek word, to push down, is in the present active part. It's the idea of holding it down, like holding a basketball underwater. It's continually pressing it down. Dr. Bahnsen did his doctoral dissertation on self-deception, that you just can't deceive yourself. And the longer you do, the harder it is to see clearly. As a Christian and as an apologist, I must say that though I have a degree in apologetics, I simply view apologetics as a means to clear the smoke out of the room. I much prefer to bring the good news. It says here, preach the word. My final point is that in light of the information we do have, God has graciously called us to embrace the redemption found in Christ. A holy and righteous God cannot deny his own justice, but because of the great love with which he has loved sinners, he poured out the due penalty for our sins upon his Son, that we might stand righteous before him. This is the announcement of the gospel. I was observing an interesting dialogue my brother Sai here was having with one of his detractors. The man kept demanding indexical and dectic linguistic verification for Sai's commitment to Scripture. It was as if these things were the man's master, demanding to be satisfied. He was seeking to convince Sai that if Sai could merely propitiate his master's demands, he would forsake them and believe in the Christ of Scripture. But friends, if one has such a tenuous relationship with that which governs their heart that they would abandon it so readily, is it really to be trusted in the first place? And what do these things offer in return for your worship? They can't offer truth nor redemption. One of the greatest minds in the first 1,000 years of the New Covenant Church, maybe the greatest mind period, was Augustine of Hippo. It was with extreme intellectual and theological acumen that he uttered credo ut intelligam. I believe in order that I might understand. We have the option of believing in the weak and shifting sands of human disciplines that change like the tide, or the eternal, timeless words of Christ regarding himself, which yields access to understanding, the understanding of all things and true and eternal life.